This message is for someone who is on the precipice of doing something potentially a little bit outside of their norm that they may have felt called to do for a little while, but kind of avoided. So if that sounds like you, then feel free to stick around and we'll see what comes out as far as what this opportunity is or how it might play out. Two of Swords, Ace of Pentacles, Six of Swords, Two of Pentacles. So, it feels like there is some uncertainty surrounding this. It feels like there's a lot of potential to whatever this is. Whether this feels like with these like pentacles here, there's something about this being an opportunity that is rooted in the physical realm. So for a lot of people, I think that may be some kind of like career situation, shifting your physical location or, making some sort of change to, your body, your lifestyle, something that like very much directly impacts like your day to day in the physical. Um, and there's some uncertainty about this because I think that your priorities up until this point have been to kind of like move forward. I think that you may have been focused on kind of like releasing baggage, like trying to like trim the fat in a little way, in a words are hard, in a lot of ways. And this may be something that requires you to like invest a little bit more, and you may have been more in like the mode of sort of trying to like, cut down on, the amount of commitments that you have or the amount of like demands that you have on your time or your, financial bank account, if you will. And so I think like that's almost like what's underlying like the insecurity about like whether or not this is something that like you want to invest in. Um, let's see what the cards and spirit have to say about that and about this opportunity that I think is a real opportunity. I mean, with that Ace of Pentacles coming out there, it's like there is something real here that I think has the potential to like benefit you in a lot of ways. We got Ace of Swords. That's two aces out now. So there's definitely a lot in terms of like new perspective, new investments. The Emperor, the Judgment. What else we got? Seven of Wands. So I think that there's something about almost like reframing the perspective from where you're looking at this. Because I think that you may have been looking at this situation from the perspective of, okay, what is it going to cost me? Whether that's your time, whether that's your money, whether that's your energy, there's this sense of like, what is it going to cost me? Um, and Spirit's like almost wanting you to like turn that around and say like, what could this potentially give me? Not in the sense of like, oh, everything has to be giving you something immediately, but like what is like the underlying motivation? What is the part of you that wants to move towards this saying and why? Because I think that that part is represented by this like Emperor card here, where that came out under like the Ace of Pentacles. It's like this higher self version of you that is like very, very empowered. Um, especially when it comes to taking action. I think that there is something about like this opportunity, if it were to go well, to be something that would empower you quite a bit, something that would allow you a lot more freedom to act as yourself and to act in accordance to like what you know, what you believe, what you want. And I think that they're almost like, trying to provide some clarity here about like this isn't something that you feel drawn to or that you want, because of like anything from the past. It's almost like this is the opportunity that presents itself when all the fog and all the baggage from the past is cleared. And so, like, the fact that you're feeling drawn to this thing that you may have, sort of avoided in the past is indicative of the fact that you've made a lot of progress. Like, you have moved a lot of these, like, previous energies, and you're seeing things a lot more clearly now. And I think that it's understandable, with the Seven of Wands coming out under the Two of Pentacles, that like you are a little bit like protective of your time, your energy, your money, like whatever. Like because you are aware of the fact that like I think whatever balance you have there may feel a little bit precarious at the current moment. And so there's this sense of like, well, I don't want to like add anything else that's going to like disrupt the balance. I don't want to, set myself back. I don't want to, whatever. I think the overall message here is that like whatever this thing is that you are considering doing, investing in, pursuing, is it's not something that's going to set you back. Yes, it's something that I think you may have to utilize some of your skills related to balancing, related to prioritizing, related to um, navigating like that kind of situation. But I think that it is overall something that would be beneficial to you in a lot of ways. And I think that they want me to reiterate that it's like the desire for whatever this is, the desire to pursue this, the connection that you have to this is not coming from an unhealed place. It's not coming from an unsure place. And I think on some level you know that. I think on some level you know that. But what about, I kind of like want to know about the considerations that you may have as far as the stress that this could put on your time, your energy, your finances. Like, what say you, Spirit? Nine of Wands, Ten of Cups, Four of Swords, Queen of Pentacles, the Empress. Things are going to come together. I think that there is like a sense right now of almost like you kind of being in like the last like little push before the finish line with this Nine of Wands followed by the Ten of Cups. It's like you are right on the brink. Right on the brink of, I think, the kind of connection and stability that you would need to make this happen without overexerting yourself. With this like Four of Swords, Queen of Pentacles, there's something here about like you having the resources and like having the support to do this in a way that, like I said, it's not going to burn you out. It's actually going to be something that I think is allows you like the space to rest, to recover, to build from a place of balance and rest. And I think like giving yourself more of that than you've had. I think that whatever this is supposed to be like part of your recovery process, not another drain on you. And there is something like with this Empress here coming out at the end about, I think, this whole journey setting you up to be in a position of receiving that. I think also being in the position of, I think, like tapping into your softer energy. I think it's interesting that we have both like the Emperor and the Empress coming out as representative of, sort of parts of yourself that I think are emerging through this process, through this journey, through this energy. And there's almost this sense of like you being able to through whatever this is, like more fully embody both the masculine and feminine aspects of your identity and like your energy. Um, and I'm hearing that which is needed will be provided. That which is needed will be provided. Um, and if it hasn't been provided yet, then it isn't needed yet. And so, there's almost this sense of like you can move as slowly as you need. And I think, especially, sort of in the process of whatever this is, it may be more helpful to work on like tapping into, some of these more like receptive feminine archetypes. Because sort of like the end result here is like this emperor energy, this I know where to take action, take charge. And like that energy may be kind of what kickstarts or like catalyzes this process. But it's sort of like in going through this process, they're not asking you to have fully embodied that yet. It's like that's something that you get through the process, through the journey. And within this journey, I think that there's something about almost like moving as quickly or as far as you have been given resources or support to do so. Maybe if this is like a collaboration, then that emperor energy kickstarting that would be like like reaching out and like contacting someone, kind of getting things in motion. And then that empress energy that comes in is okay, then you're not going to be responsible for bugging them every day for an update or making sure that they do it or this and that. It's sort of like then you kind of wait for them to return that energy back to you. You wait for this environment where you feel supported in that collaboration, where there is the proper investment on both sides. So it's kind of like you get the ball rolling by tapping into that emperor energy. And then what's asked of you is to exist in this more like healing and receptive state, sort of building off of what you are given after that, kind of like putting out the signal that this is something that you're ready for, this is something that you're interested in, and then allowing that support to come in, allowing yourself to accept that, allowing yourself to nurture that, allowing yourself to grow with that. They're kind of like giving me the example of like someone who is like looking to like buy something, like say a piece of furniture online, and like they go and they put out like a wanted ad, or they contact certain people that are manufacturers of that, and it's like that's the taking action, that's the getting the ball rolling. And then it's like, okay, then it's your job to kind of sit back and wait for people to respond, for people to give you more information about like, oh, what's available, or what's the pricing, or how do we work from this. If you're like commissioning something, yeah, sure, you got to decide on the artist that you want to commission. But once you've sent in your commission details, it's not on you to make sure that everything happens. And I think that that's kind of like this interplay between the masculine and the feminine, the active, and I don't even want to say like passive, because I don't think that like feminine energy is passive, but I think that it is more creative and more reflective and more receptive. Um, and so I think that there's something here about, maybe the part of you that is feeling a little indecisive about this is the part of you that's like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to make everything happen. Oh my God, I'm gonna have to do this and this and then, and Spirit's like, okay, calm down. Like if this is something that is really good for you, and this is something that we want you to do, it's not going to be something that is going to just put you in a state of like perpetual exhaustion. It's going to be something that like helps to lift you out of that. It's going to be something that is healing, something that is restorative. Um, and you only have to go as far as you've been, like given the directions. It's like if they're prompting you to reach out to someone. Reach out to them. If they're, prompting you to kind of go out of your way to try something new, maybe try something new. Um, and then see what happens. You don't have to have the whole picture from the very start. You only need to have enough trust and enough support to get to the next mile marker. But what about kind of like this opportunity, this situation as a whole, overall? Um, what should we be aware of? What might actually come up that is difficult? And how do we approach that? I feel like that's kind of a good question because even in like the smoothest of procedures, there's always certain complications that arise or even just difficulties there. So I think it's always good to be aware of those and how to navigate them. We got the Knight of Swords, the Eight of Wands, the Ace of Wands, and the Devil. So this feels a little bit like I think the, biggest pitfall that you could run into is almost like this feeling of not letting it get off the ground. Like feeling the energy, expressing what you want, moving forward with this Knight of Swords, Eight of Wands, but then kind of like continually circling back to like this Ace of Wands, this beginning. Um, I think like this sense of like if we're using the metaphor of like commissioning art, it's like, this cycle would be sort of representative of like you going and talking to an artist about, their work, their portfolio, giving them the commission details, and then just deciding, well, maybe I'll just talk to someone else. And it's like it's good to like keep your options open. It's good to like consider different options, but I think that there's almost like a level of indecision that is hidden behind like a little bit of like perfectionism, in this sense. And there's just sort of like that warning of like don't get so caught up in like needing to have it now or needing to have it perfectly or like whatever else. It's like what you want, so go for that, commit to that rather than, maybe for example, with like the commission metaphor, you find an artist that you really like their prices, you really like their art, but then they're like, oh, well, it's going to be like a few months, and then it's like, well, no, it needs to happen right now. It's like, well, if that is the artist that you really want and it's, reasonable in all other cases, maybe allow that to come through. And like, who knows, there could even be something like, oh, the artist ends up having a unexpected opening and you get your commission sooner. Like, you never know. And so there's something here about like you don't need to sacrifice what you want, and once you know what you want, stick with that. Like, stick with that, because it's like you're going to get where you need to go regardless. But I do think the idea of almost like feeling like you're continually going in circles with the, oh, I really want this, oh, well, what about this way, but what about that, it's kind of like the energy is intense enough that this desire or this pull is not going to go anywhere. Um, it's not going to go anywhere. So even if, it takes some time, or even if you have other considerations, other energy. It's almost like stay the course. Stay the course once you know what you want, once you have found yourself with, an opportunity to receive that. Stay the course and like trust that the feelings that brought you there in the first place, that open those doors within yourself, um, those aren't going anywhere. Those aren't going anywhere. Like that is going to persist. So, there you might as well be as methodical and as considerate about that as you can. Don't let the urgency turn into impatience or turn into giving up prematurely on an opportunity that otherwise meets all of your needs and would give you a. So I think that would be the biggest pitfall to be aware of. Um, Anything else we should know about this situation and, how it might play out in the long term or in relation to others or anything like that? Oh, those sort of feel like they're together, but I feel like there's also more interesting. So we have the Six of Cups, Ten of Swords, Five of Swords, and I think like what this is telling me is that I think that this is something that is going to help resolve maybe some of like the past baggage that you have been struggling to let go of. Even like the past baggage that, maybe you're feeling like I can't start this until I'm ready or until I've let go of all of this or healed all of this. It's like actually doing this is going to help you to heal some of that stuff. I think it's going to help you to better understand why certain things happen the way that they did. Um, and be able to accept those losses, accept that in a healthy way and move forward. I think because it's almost like you're going to be provided with something that's better, but also something that helps you to understand, that helps you to accept, and see things, especially past situations, for what they really were. We also have the Five of Cups, the Page of Pentacles, the Three of Cups, and the Nine of Pentacles. I think that there's also something here about this being something that is intended to be a good and stabilizing thing for you personally, for your individual sense of self, your financial sense of self, all of those things. Um, and I think that it's also going to be helpful to those around you. With that, like, Page of Pentacles, Five of Cups, I think that there is something here about this may like force you to let go of something that you previously wanted that maybe was not a possibility, and maybe pursuing this sort of like rules out other possibilities. It's kind of like the energy of, maybe someone used to have like a desire to be a doctor and they decide instead to pursue an opportunity to be a chef. And, overall, being a chef is a good choice that is beneficial to them and the people around them and all of that. But it's like they also sort of have to grieve the doctor that they never were, kind of an energy. And I think that there's this sense of getting what you need, but maybe something that you also like wanted in the past, or something that didn't work out in the past that I think maybe you still wanted, even though it didn't work out. And understanding, why it didn't work out, I think is almost like grieving a different type of loss, grieving a different sort of situation, realizing that there are things that you are cut out for in a very aligned and very successful way. Um, but it's almost like in order for you to have and do those things that you are cut out for, there are other things that are not a good fit. And, sometimes we want what we want, and sometimes it's hard to accept that. And it's hard to accept that, we can let those things go and grieve the past while also still supporting and appreciating the future and what does work for us and what does sustain us. Eight of Pentacles, Queen of Cups, Eight of Swords, King of Swords. I think that this is also something that is going to bolster your confidence in a lot of ways. Like confidence in your own like intelligence and your ability to discern like what is meant for you and who you are, as well as like certain skills that you have. And I think being open to almost like open to your own growth, because I think that there's like almost a part here of you that I don't know. It's like with the like metaphor that I was saying about like the doctor and chef. There might have been like a part of you that just sort of perpetually felt like, oh, I failed because I wasn't a doctor. I failed because I wasn't a doctor. And it's like, okay, going through, culinary school and, working in a kitchen and things, it's like teaching and helping you to recognize like this whole other set of skills, and being open to the idea that life being different than you planned is not the same thing as like failure. It's not the same thing as defeat. And I think getting you out of that headspace of, oh, I'm just a failed doctor. It's like, no, you're a successful chef. There's a difference. You're not like, you don't need to define yourself by what you didn't do or, what you thought at one point you wanted to achieve. You're not a failed doctor, you're a successful chef. And I think like that reframe is also going to be something that is very empowering and like validating as far as the skills that you've built, the work that you've put in, and like seeing that actually reflected in a way that transcends whatever doubts you had about yourself. So I think that this has a lot of lovely potential. So as you feel so called, I would encourage you to pursue those opportunities that arise. Yeah, hopefully that helps, and best of luck out there.